How is it going, everyone? It's Calum here, and today we're going to be talking about The Nun 2, the sequel to my favorite paranormal horror movie of all time, The Nun. And I am saying that in all seriousness. I love The Nun, the original movie. I know that it's not the best in terms of story, however, I just love the visuals of that movie. I love the atmosphere of that movie. I love the abandoned abbey that they're in. I love the acting, and I love the storytelling. Even though the story itself, yeah, it may have not been the best told thing, the actual storytelling to get there and the history and the lore behind the abbey and everything was really interesting, and I really fell in love with that movie, and I really love the Conjuring universe in general. I think that movie, the original The Nun, was a great addition to the Conjuring universe. And The Nun 2, I was pretty excited for. I had my hopes up, and maybe that was my biggest problem going into this movie. I had my hopes a little too high, because after watching this movie, I gotta say, while I didn't hate this movie, I don't think that this movie is necessarily a bad movie. I don't think it's necessarily a good movie either. I'm pretty torn on this film overall, and I think the main thing that really annoyed me with this film is just the lighting throughout this entire film. You see, the original Nun movie, it made sense for it to be dark because it was set in this abbey. There wouldn't be much lights, like abandoned for the most part. It made more sense. This one takes place in a boarding school, and the lighting is still super, super dark throughout the entire movie. There's even a scene where they're in like a hotel room looking thing, and it's still super. They're just like sitting around talking in the dark, and it's just like, why is this film made so dark? I don't understand that. I don't know if they were trying to hide, maybe some visual CGI stuff. I don't know. But whatever the reason was, it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth making this entire movie dark just for that. So that was my biggest complaint with the movie, honestly, overall. The acting and everything else, I did enjoy. I enjoyed Tasha Farmiga as Sister Irene, who she played in the original Nun as well. And we also had Maurice back, who was played by Jonas Blokoy. I'm never going to pronounce that right. Blokoy? I'm going to say that. But yeah, Maurice is back in this. And of course, you have Bonnie Aarons back as Valak, the demon nun. You have some new characters in this, but honestly, all the new characters that were introduced are pretty terrible, if I'm being honest. Deborah was one of the new nuns in this, and I couldn't stand that character. You had Kate, who was the mom of a character named Sophie, and I really didn't like these characters either. Maurice, for some reason in this movie, was just... Maurice creeped me out in this movie, I'm going to be honest. He gave me a little bit of creeper vibes in this movie. I don't... the way he was acting, just... Him and Sophie's, friendship was just really off-putting. I didn't like it. But that may just be more of a personal thing, I guess. It just seemed kind of creepy to me. I don't know. So I didn't really like that aspect of it either. But yeah, I wasn't honestly a big fan of any of the newer characters. It's not that the actors or actresses did a bad job. It's just that I didn't really think that the characters were that interesting, and I don't really think that they added anything to the story. They really didn't add anything that needed to be there. A lot of these characters just, they're kind of there just so the plot can progress, and that's basically it. In fact, like I said, some of these characters just don't even fit in. They almost feel like they're kind of like a very last-minute addition or something. Like, they don't even feel like they should be in the movie. But it's what it is. What it is. Overall, though, the acting, at least, for the most part, is pretty good. I did enjoy all of the acting and everything like that. The visuals in this movie, whenever you can see them through the dark lighting, I think that they actually look pretty good. There's some really cool moments in this movie. There's one where Valak kind of stretches her head out through a painting, which is really creepy looking. And you always get those nice kind of background shots of, something kind of lurking in the background that you get in all the Conjuring movies. So whenever you get those moments, those are always really cool. This movie starts off pretty brutal. I will say that I think this is probably the most death that's happened in a Conjuring-verse film. I don't think that there's been another film that has had this much death in it. This one has a lot. The film starts off with a priest getting set on fire by Valak, and I was just like, okay, this is going quite a bit different than what I'm used to. It almost felt a little bit slasher in some areas, and I'll be honest, I didn't really enjoy that. This doesn't seem like the type of movie to do that with. And maybe that's because, you know, I'm a fan of the other Conjuring movies now. I've done history on, you know, the actual cases that are in the actual Conjuring movies themselves, and I'm familiar with things like exorcisms and stuff like that, and I've studied that stuff, and I find that very interesting. And maybe it's just because I know this stuff, it kind of takes me out of the experience when I just see like a priest getting lifted up and set on fire. It's just like, yeah, okay, you're going far-fetched here. Maybe that's why. I don't know. But it just, seeing the nun go around and just like basically slaughtering people like Jason, just, it didn't really fit the movie very well. It didn't fit the series very well. This doesn't really fit in with the whole, I guess, the way the other Conjuring universe films have kind of worked out so far. So I wasn't a big fan of that. I could have done without that. I think they should have just kind of like, I get that they want to make Valak a threat. I get that. And I think that there's ways to do that that are more practical than just almost becoming a slasher to a point. You know, like this was probably like a couple kills away from becoming a slasher. I'm going to be honest with you. But still, is what it is. The actual story behind this one, like I said, it's not super interesting. They're basically, Valak's after some eyes, and the eyes are basically of an old saint that is like the patron saint of the blind. So if Valak gets these eyes, then she'll basically be more powerful. I don't want to give too much away other than just that. That's kind of like the basis of the story. I don't want to give any real spoilers away. But there's some interesting things that they do with that, and some interesting ideas, and the effects when, you know, the climax comes of this movie are really, really good, and I enjoyed that part. Like I said, whenever you can see this film, it looks good. It's just the lighting's so dark throughout it. It's kind of an annoyance, because I think that this film would look really good if they just turned up that brightness in some of the scenes. You know, they could have even kept a lot of the dark scenes, but just have some scenes in the light, because for some reason this entire movie was so dark. But anywho, overall, my opinion on this movie is that it was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't bad. The critics hate it more than I do, but the audience loves it more than I do. I'm in the middle in this one. The critics gave it a 45%, which is basically like, we can go ahead and call that a 4 out of 10. Or I guess we'll call it a 5 out of 10 because we'll round up. And then the audience gave it a 75%, which is basically rounding up an 8 out of 10. So I would give it honestly a 6 out of 10. I don't think it's that great. I had a lot of problems with this one. I definitely like the first one better. And the first one also had terrible reviews, but it had terrible reviews from the audience and critics both. The first one had basically a 2 out of 10 for the critics and a 4 out of 10 for audience, if you round the numbers off. So it didn't do well either, but I personally like that one better. I think this is going to be one of those things where if you like the first Nun, you're probably not going to like this one. If you didn't like the first Nun, you're probably going to like the Nun too. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe this will have what you wanted from the first Nun and you didn't get. But for me, the first Nun is just, it's a better movie. It looks better. It plays better. The atmosphere is better. The setting is better. The characters are way more interesting. And I just, even though the story is not perfect and there's definitely plot holes of the original Nun, to me it's just a lot more exciting than this one is. I'd say the original Nun is probably like an 8 out of 10 for me. And the Nun 2 is definitely a 6 out of 10. And that's where we're going to leave for today's video. I hope that you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching. I will talk to you in the next video. You have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.